Somewhere in the middle of the Arizona desert, hidden behind a chain-link fence and a military security perimeter, sits the largest collection of warplanes on Earth. Over 4,000 aircraft, bombers, fighter jets, spy planes, presidential helicopters, all baking in silence under the desert sun, lined up in perfect rows that stretch as far as the eye can see. You won't find this place on a tourist map. You can't just drive up and walk in. And yet, what's stored inside those fences is worth more than the entire GDP of most countries. But here is what nobody tells you. These planes aren't dead. Some of them are waiting. And when America needs them, they come back to life. This is the story of the most extraordinary place in the United States military, the aircraft graveyard of Arizona, and the incredible secrets buried inside it. The year is 1945. World War II has just ended, and America suddenly has a problem it never had before: thousands of aircraft, and nowhere to put them. In the span of just a few years, the United States had built the most powerful air force in the history of human civilization. B-29 superfortresses, C-47 transport planes, every type of warplane imaginable, produced by the tens of thousands. And now, with the war over, the military needed to store them, preserve them, or eventually dispose of them. They needed a place, a very specific kind of place. The aircraft needed to be protected from rain, from salt air, and most of all, from rust. Metal corrodes fast in humid environments. A plane left in Florida or along the Pacific coast would be eaten alive within years. The military needed somewhere bone dry. They found it in Tucson, Arizona. The region around Davis-Monthan Air Force Base offered conditions almost perfectly engineered for aircraft storage. Humidity in the 10 to 20% range. Only 11 inches of rainfall annually, hard alkaline soil that prevented heavy planes from sinking into the ground, and a high altitude of 2,550 feet that helped slow corrosion. It was, in short, a natural refrigerator for aircraft. Not cold, but dry. And dry was everything. By May of 1946, more than 600 B-29 superfortresses and 200 C-47 Skytrains had been moved to Davis-Monthan. Among them were two aircraft that changed the course of human history: the Enola Gay and the Boxcar. The planes that dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. They were parked in the Arizona desert, waiting. What started as a temporary solution for surplus World War II aircraft eventually became something far more extraordinary. Over the following decades, every branch of the American military began sending their retired aircraft to Davis-Monthan. The Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard, even NASA. If an American military aircraft was being retired from service, this was where it came. Today, the facility is officially known as the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group, AMARG, the sole aircraft boneyard and parts reclamation facility for all excess military and government aircraft in the United States, employing over 550 people, almost all of them civilians. The numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. The sprawling boneyard currently holds over 3,400 aircraft, ranging from supersonic fighter jets to massive refueling planes to strategic bombers. 75 different aircraft types and 6,700 engines in all. Think about that for a moment. 75 different types of aircraft, all sitting in the Arizona desert. The collection is so vast that if all these aircraft were operational, it would potentially constitute the second largest air force in the world, behind only the United States Air Force itself. A graveyard that is also, quietly, the second most powerful air fleet on the planet. But if you think these planes are simply rusting away in silence, you are missing the most fascinating part of this story. When a military aircraft arrives at the boneyard, it doesn't just get parked and forgotten. It gets categorized. AMARG uses a precise classification system. Type 1000 aircraft are placed in long-term storage, maintained intact, and ready to potentially return to flying status. No parts may be removed without express permission. Type 2000 aircraft are designated as parts sources, essentially living storage bins kept so that components can be harvested to keep other aircraft flying. Type 4000 aircraft have been completely stripped, every usable part removed, and are destined to be broken down into scrap metal and recycled. So when a plane arrives at the Boneyard, it might be a sleeping giant waiting for its second life. Or it might already be destined to be slowly disassembled to keep other planes in the air. The mechanics here never know which fate awaits each aircraft when it rolls through the gates. From fiscal years 2016 through 2026, AMARG reclaimed over 79,000 parts, with 86% of them classified as priority items, totaling $4.37 billion in value. $4 billion in parts, saved, not purchased new, pulled from the wings of planes that most people assume are just rusting in the sun. Every single time a mechanic in the field needs a rare component for a Vietnam-era aircraft that hasn't been manufactured in 40 years, the answer almost always comes from the Arizona desert. Now, here is where the story gets truly remarkable, because some of these aircraft don't stay in the Boneyard. Some of them wake up. In February 2015, a team of Air Force mechanics walked up to a B-52 Stratofortress bomber that had been sitting in the Arizona desert for 7 years. The bomber was 53 years old. It had been decommissioned, written off, left to bake under the Tucson sun while the world moved on without it. They called it Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider had been in long-term storage at Davis-Monthan since 2008, tail number 61-1007. But it wasn't going to stay there. Another B-52 had been badly damaged in a fire during maintenance at an Air Force base in Guam. The active fleet dropped below the number mandated by Congress. The military needed a replacement, and fast. So they went back to the Boneyard. What followed was one of the most remarkable aircraft restoration programs in U.S. Air Force history. Teams spent approximately 45,000 man-hours restoring Ghost Rider to fighting shape. 45,000 hours on a single plane, an aircraft that everyone assumed would never fly again. When the pilot finally climbed into the cockpit after 7 years of desert storage, he reported that after almost 7 years, she cranked up just fine. Ghost Rider flew again. A 53-year-old bomber, resurrected from the desert, returned to nuclear service. But that wasn't the end. A few years later, a second B-52, nicknamed Wise Guy, was pulled from the same Boneyard after sitting idle for over a decade. When the maintenance team opened the cockpit, they found something extraordinary. A message had been left inside, written in black marker on a metal clipboard. It read, "AMARG, this is 60-034. A cold warrior that stood sentinel over America from the darkest days of the Cold War to the global fight against terror. Take good care of her until we need her again." Someone, years earlier, had known, had believed that one day that plane would fly again. And they were right. Ghost Rider and Wise Guy are not the only incredible stories buried in this desert. There is also the story of the LC-130 Hercules, nicknamed Phoenix, a Navy cargo plane that crashed in Antarctica in 1971 and sank into the ice. Only its tail and propeller tips were visible above the surface. In 1988, it was finally dug out, repaired, and returned to flying service for another 10 years before eventually retiring to the Boneyard in Arizona. A plane swallowed by Antarctic ice for 17 years, rescued, flown again, and finally laid to rest in the desert. The Boneyard today is bigger and busier than most people realize. The facility currently stores aircraft ranging from B-52 Stratofortress and B-1B Lancer bombers to F-16 Fighting Falcons and C-5 Galaxy cargo planes, once America's defenders of the sky, now preserved for parts or history. And the work never stops. Public Relations Manager Robert Rain, speaking during a recent tour of the facility, put it simply, "Most of these planes have been decommissioned, but the parts are still very useful. The parts are all viable." As of recently, public bus tours of the Boneyard have permanently ended due to changes in U.S. Air Force security considerations, with no plans to restart them. The closest most people can get today is looking through a chain-link fence along Escalante Road in Tucson, where the rows of aircraft stretch into the distance as far as you can see. But don't let the silence fool you. Inside that fence, hundreds of workers are harvesting parts, maintaining stored aircraft, and in rare but extraordinary cases, breathing life back into machines that the world had already forgotten. There is something deeply human about the Boneyard in Arizona. These aircraft were built by people who worked double shifts in factories across America. They were flown by young men and women over Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, Afghanistan. They carried nuclear weapons through the Cold War, circling the sky for hours, ready for a war that thankfully never came. And then one day their service ended, and the desert took them in. But the Boneyard is not a place of endings. It is a place of waiting, a national reserve holding the memory and the metal of decades of American aviation history, ready in case the world ever needs it again. Somewhere in the Arizona desert, right now, there is a B-52 bomber sitting in the sun. Its cockpit is sealed. Its fuel tanks are empty. A coat of white preservative covers its wings. And somewhere on a clipboard inside, someone may have left a note. Take good care of her, until we need her again.